Hello there and welcome to Il Salotto Sessions. I am Sara Seravalli, an Italian event organizer with a profound enthusiasm for design and architecture, bringing over 15 years of experience from my work across showrooms in Milan, Paris and London. Fueled by a passion for connecting people in the design world, I founded Design Pop-Up in 2014, a specification-focused event that has since traveled throughout the UK and Ireland. Today I'm expanding my vision with Il Salotto, a vibrant space, both physical and virtual, dedicated to inspiring meaningful conversations and fostering connections within the design community. I hope you will enjoy my chats. Hi there, and welcome to this new episode of Il Salotto Session. I've got a fellow podcaster here with me today, Rebecca Hill from the Healed Approach. Good morning, Rebecca.
Good morning. Thank you so much for having me here today. I always think it's easier this side.
Do you? Right, okay. I kind of wish you were here sitting on the sofa with me. I don't know if you have the same impression when you do your interviews, but I had a first in-person interview here last week, and there is a completely different dynamic than when you're interviewing somebody remotely, isn't it?
100%. It's why I've taken mine. Obviously, I did mine for a long time, same as you. But I do feel like there's a completely different dynamic when you're in person. I still think you can have incredible conversations this way. Otherwise, I wouldn't be here today and I wouldn't have done mine. And also, I think, as somebody with ADHD, I think that the in-person interaction as well, you can't beat it. But we are living in a world where we've got the opportunity to do these things as we are. And so we need to make the most of it.
Right. So next time you're coming here, okay?
Yes, I'm up. I'm sold. I'm sold.
I've got a beautiful salotto for you, waiting for you and coffee and tea and everything. So 2 weeks ago, you were invited by our common friends at Solus to be part on a panel about the empowerment of women in the building industry. How did it go?
I think what's the best way of saying this without trying to be modest? But yeah, I mean...
Don't need to be modest, just go for it.
I think it went brilliantly. I really do think it went brilliantly. And obviously, there was a lot of people involved and amazing people that were involved as well. It was very nerve-wracking. There was a lot of imposter syndrome. I think I told you this beforehand. But like you said as well, where would we be without a little bit of that? But I really feel that we could have spoken in more depth for much, much longer. Not just myself on the panel, but also Kelly Holmes. She was fantastic. Kelly was so down to earth. And I even got the opportunity to speak to her for a little bit afterwards. So it was just really nice to have a space where we could talk about some of these things that we're not doing enough of. And one thing that was really interesting as well is that the room were just silent. It was packed. It was packed out, but everybody was just really engaged in the conversations that we were having. So yeah, I think it went really, really well. And I think kudos to the team at Solus for managing to do, what they are doing, not just for that event, but all the other events that they are doing. But yeah, I think it went really, really well. And I think they were pleased with it.
So what were the main takeaways of the conversation, of the chat?
So there were quite a few things that we spoke about. And I think a couple of the things that really stood out for me were, obviously there was Kelly Holmes, she spoke and she kind of, what came across from Kelly was just her resilience and her ability to overcome adversity and how that's really helped her, to propel herself and, and all the things that she's overcome and the belief that she's had in herself along the way, that really came through. But her vulnerability, her ability to be vulnerable was really powerful. And then in terms of the panel talk that I did with the other ladies, brilliant ladies in the industry, most of them have been in the industry a lot longer than I, but I think there was, really believe in yourself, take responsibility for yourself. I think there was also, the message around how powerful it is when women lift each other up, but also as well, we did go down, I did go down the route of saying that also that, sometimes there are also issues in that in terms of, women feeling that when they're in leadership positions, the scarcity mindset. So we're not always lifting each other up as well as we can. But when we do, it's incredible. And also about how we need to bring boys and men along with us on this journey, because I think that as amazing as it is that we are empowering women and we're seeing, us moving towards better equality. We still have a long, long way to go. I think that unless we are bringing along men and boys in, with us, then it's going to fall short, and we're never really going to get the true equality that we're really looking for.
So tell me about your story. How did you arrive to where you are today? Obviously, you are an incredibly respected figure in the industry, and your work about sustainability, but also women in the industry, is very strong. What's your journey? What's your journey been so far?
Oh gosh, how long have we got? I'll try and keep
How
it.
longer you want. I love a chat as much as you do, so go for it.
It's really interesting because I think there are so many people that will say to me, I've had two sides of the coin, because I am relatively new to the industry. I haven't been in it my whole life. And I think there was a lot of skepticism around that to begin with. And also as well, there is, I put out there all this, all these great things that I'm doing. And I think people don't actually always see what's happened underneath and how I've actually got here. Because even when I was new into the industry, I was there for a reason, and there is value that I always had. I've had to learn this, because there have been times when I thought, I can't do this anymore. I'm going to suck it in. But, I think I'm very, very, I will answer your question in a minute, because I know I'm going off on a bit of a tangent, but I'm very, very purpose driven. And I think that I always have to really get in check that my own ego, right? Because the only reason that I would give up and stop what I'm doing is because of my own ego getting the better of me. What I'm doing is more than me. It's about more than me. And so it's about more than what I perceive people to think of me. But going back to the journey, so I started out as a secondary school teacher. Basically, I had no intention of going into teaching, but I did a degree, went away to Manchester, did a degree in languages, and then came out, worked around, worked in different industries for a bit. I was in the shipping industry. I worked for ESSO, doing translation for ESSO. I was like, what am I going to do with this degree? I'm like, I've got this languages degree, don't really know what to do. Oh, I'm going to have to go into teaching. I think at the time they were offering bursaries if it was a shortage subject. So they put me through university again to get my PGCE. So I went into teaching. But, I feel like, this is another topic, but I do feel like I was a victim kind of just going through that academic process and not really knowing what I wanted to do or where I could do, and not knowing the opportunities that were available for me. But lo and behold, I ended up in teaching secondary schools, inner city Manchester. It does make me laugh now when sometimes clients are a bit apprehensive about me going on site, and I'm like, come on, I taught secondary school kids in inner city Manchester on the outskirts of Moss Side. Trust me, I can handle a few men on site. It was character building. But I hold my hands up. In my late 20s, I was not, I'm not saying I was a bad teacher, I wouldn't want to, kind of say that, but I definitely wasn't offering my students, what I could have offered them. And the reason I say this is that my journey up until that point was very linear. So if I had, you've got to remember that a lot of the kids I was teaching were not very academic, but I had no idea of anything outside. I had a little bit, like I said, a little bit of experience in other industries, but not enough to recognize that if one of the teenage boys would have, really benefited from doing an apprenticeship, not just in construction, but in anything else, that wasn't necessarily a door I could have opened for him. Yeah. Does that make sense? Anyway, then I was in my early 30s, I think. And lots of experiences in Manchester. It was getting tough. I was so committed to my job at that point. I was single, no kids, whatever. And I was like, I started to apply for other jobs. I think I got burgled a couple of times. I got mugged on the street. And I was like, do you know what? I'm going to just apply for jobs all over. And, if they keep me in Manchester, it keeps me in Manchester. If it takes me outside of Manchester, that's great. Applied for all teaching jobs, had several interviews, some real near misses as well, but then ended up applying for a promotion. And the only reason I applied for this promotion was it was back in my hometown, Lincoln, where I'm back now. But it needed a lot more experience. It needed SLT, so senior leadership experience, which I'd not had. I'd only ever been a classroom teacher. But I thought, do you know what? It's in inclusion and diversity. I'm a languages teacher. There's a bit of a link there. So I applied for it and I got it. So, we say now that that's quite rare. I think most women won't apply for a job that they're not fully qualified for. Men will, but women won't. So I was I was in the minority, not that I knew it at the time, because back then, I genuinely did not, see the gender imbalances that did exist. But I do think that you get to a certain point in your career and it's not that obvious. But then as you move up the ladder, it does become more obvious, which I did see.
I think it's also age. I'm much more aware now of what is going on than when I was, 30, early 30s, late 20s.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's experience, isn't it? But I also
Yeah.
think this is why it's really important that we mentor younger women
Yeah.
coming into the industry, because we can educate them and teach them. Because the thing is, though, as I began to experience barriers, so as I began to experience, there was a lot of bullying, there was a lot of misogyny, there was a lot of, victimization, throughout my career, which at the time I thought was me. I thought I was the problem. Being told as a young mum who just started out as a leader, in her own right, I couldn't go and pick the kids up from school because it wouldn't look good on my team and all those kind of things. And I literally, and I see this so many times, I literally kind of, burned myself out. I ended up having a breakdown, but that was for other
Put
reasons.
yourself under too much pressure.
Yeah, because I didn't see that it was the system. I didn't see that, we're living in a gendered workplace still. The ideal, I said this at the event with Dame Kelly Holmes, the ideal worker is still a white, middle-aged man with no caring responsibilities. And if you don't fit into that demographic, you are going to experience barriers. And whether you're female or not, it could be that you've got neurodivergence, it could be, your sexuality, it could be whatever it is, and this is why I think I am so super, super passionate about seeing more women thrive. But this isn't just about women. This is about, diversity across the board. Yeah, it's about getting younger people.
It's equality. Haha. We all need to have access to the same amount of opportunities, the same quality of opportunities. Doesn't matter whether we're green, yellow, black, or white.
Exactly that. And I think sometimes people think, because I'm, I talk, quite passionately as a woman, because that's all I have ever experienced in my life is the world through a woman's lens. And I think sometimes people can, miss the bigger picture, I guess, of what I'm trying to say. But anyway, yeah. So I went into got a promotion. My job very quickly became dual roles. So I ended up doing a lot. So the primary purpose of my job was to go into schools, to work with leadership teams, to work with teacher training providers, to look at how they can break down barriers to education for minority children, so ethnic minority, traveller children, asylum seekers, refugees. So I was looking at curriculums, systems, environments. So I was looking at the strategic stuff. And then I was then also in my early 30s tasked with leading up creating a team from scratch, basically, to go out and do the social value side of stuff. So to work with the class teachers, to work with the families, to work with the children. So it's not too dissimilar now to what I'm doing, because obviously I've got a real passion for the community, the kind of, the educational side of what I do. But then I'm obviously now what I'm doing is I'm going into businesses within construction to look at how they can achieve better sustainability, through their projects, but through their people, through their culture and their systems. So I was in education for 19 years. I had a breakdown after I had my second son. And that's when I was like, I need to get out, need to start my business, I'm here. There was just always this burning passion. I don't know what it was, but there was just this feeling always, I'm here for something more. I'd experienced so many things, eating disorder, domestic abuse, childhood trauma, alcoholic father, inappropriate stepfather, let's say. And so I was like, I haven't done all of this to just then be completely squashed within a local authority, that didn't appreciate.
Yeah, you're a survivor. You haven't survived all that rubbish for then. Yeah, I understand that.
Yeah. Because working even as I was thinking about this morning as well, is that, we need to stop thinking, that the way that we are working, the systems and the structures that we're working are still appropriate in this day. I mean, it's not even about it being appropriate for the next generation. It's about it actually is not appropriate for many people who don't think neurotypically. 9 to 5, Monday to Friday, never suited me. I really struggled with it. And, and I was never allowed within a local authority. I mean, the irony of it was, I was there to promote inclusion and diversity across Lincolnshire schools, but we were, we still had to stick to processes and procedures. So and that's why in the end, I just thought, this doesn't fit with my values. I mean, I created a great team. They're doing great. I mean, not without issues, not without issues. I had to fight really, really hard to prove myself for a long, long time, because I was managing a team of women that were all older than me, that had a lot more experience out there, very similar to coming into the construction industry, actually. But yeah. And construction I say construction found me, it did, but I also chose to be in construction, because once I got in, I just started the business doing leadership and wellbeing coaching, because I was like, I know I need to do something, I don't know what it is, and then just ended up with clients in construction. I was like, oh my God, I love this industry. This is exactly where I'm supposed to be. And over time, I've realized that is because of what I feel that I have to offer. I feel that construction industry is an incredible industry, but it's missing out on so many amazing opportunities because it needs more people like me in the industry. And there are, I say that it needs more people like me. There are lots of people like me in the industry, but I just think that they're not. I think, what I feel like I'm here to do is to kind of hopefully raise the profile of the wonderful people that are already here in the industry doing this work.
Excuse me. So tell me about your nonna. You mentioned your nonna quite a lot on your LinkedIn posts, and she sounds like a formidable woman that played a big role in your life. Obviously, I'm Italian as well, so I'm quite interested. Ooh, she's got Italian origins as well then.
Yeah. So my mum, my grandma, my nonno, so all that side of my family, pure Italian. And as I said, alluded to earlier, my dad was an alcoholic, so he was never really around. So I feel very, I suppose, attached to my Italian heritage. And my mum, there were lots of issues, growing up with myself and my mum. So my nonna and my nonno basically brought me up, really. And I'd spend so when I was younger, they split their time between the UK and Italy.
Where are they from?
They are from, so Nonna is from a small village called San Cosmo Damiano, which is near, do you know Monte Cassino? In between Rome and Naples, west coast. Well, she's in the mountains, so she's in the mountains. My granddad was from the coast, Scoury. Yeah, so I'd split. So we'd go. I was always sent over there every summer holidays. I'd fly on my kids are still like, now, what, you just used to fly? I was like, yeah, back then.
You were allowed.
Yeah, you were allowed. So I think my nonna and nonno, it's interesting because my nonna has always been obviously both of them have been a very strong influence in my life. And I genuinely think, like, when I look at my nonna now, she's not very well, and yeah, it's only going to go one way. Bless her. She's got heart failure. There's no coming back. It's just a matter of kind of when, which is heartbreaking. But she's such a strong woman. And even to this day, she did bring me up to kind of always take responsibility and to be, to look after myself. If it wasn't for her, and this is why, and I say this as well, like when we talk about female empowerment, we forget that actually the women before us, okay, we need we need the equality of opportunity, like you said, but let's not underestimate the strength and the power of the women that preceded us. Because if it wasn't for my grandma, there is absolutely, a lot of it was tough love, not going to lie, but there is absolutely no way that I would have been able to walk away from my marriage and set up again on my own. She was always the one that even my mum to this day, whenever, they're always like, when will you find a nice man and just settle down, Rebecca? But then it's always like, but also whatever you do, never let anybody, never let anybody kind of move into your house. Don't sell your house and move in. So what I'm trying to say is they always taught me to be, financially savvy, I guess, which I don't know whether that is just the way that they were brought up, whether that's an Italian thing. I don't know. You tell me. But I don't think that that's always commonplace. I think that there are a lot of times that women, we're not taught as women to be as commercially and financially astute. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I can guarantee you it's not Italian because I didn't get any of that. You've talked a lot about resilience, and obviously you went through a lot of shit and then you still came out of it stronger. And so I've been thinking about it. I come from a small village in the northeast of Italy that was badly affected destroyed by 2 earthquakes before I was born. So the first earthquake hit in May, And then people were evacuated to the coast over the summer. And then as they came back and started rebuilding, then the second earthquake kicked in September. You know, you're just about to get yourself up, but you get hit again by something just as strong. So they still pick themselves up, rebuilt, and just head down, carry on working. And I think I always had that. So my question is, do you think you got your resilience from your grandparents, but also you got your resilience through the challenges that life thrown at you?
Yeah, I mean, when you say I got the resilience from my grandparents, I mean, I think my resilience actually came from having to stand on my own 2 feet. Obviously having those messages around, you know, kind of just make sure, you know, don't rely on anybody, right? But also it was like, okay, don't rely on anybody. We're also going to show you that you can't rely on anybody. My mum kicked me out. So my mum kicked me out when I was 16, I think. I was estranged from my family for a long, long time. I was always the black sheep. So whilst I'm saying that, you know, obviously values and stuff were kind of passed down, I also had to stand on my own 2 feet really, really quickly. And I think that's where it comes from. Like, you know, even to this day, you know, I said something recently to my mum. So my son's 15 soon. And he's like desperate to stay on his own overnight. And like, if I go away, if I'm working away, I'm like, you're going to your dad's. Oh, mum, can't you just leave me at home? I'm fine. And I was telling my mum about it. I'm like, you can't do that. You can't do that. I was like, oh, but it was okay for me to be kicked out at 16. And she, oh, you always. And I was like, but do you know what? As awful as much as kind of that was hard for me, I actually do now value and respect. I'm not saying she did the right thing. It's made me who I am today. Right. I literally, you know, because then, you know, not long after that, I then had anorexia, which I honestly think that I know that having my children was the biggest achievement in my life, but actually overcoming anorexia was huge for me because I struggled with it for so long. But I guess, you know, I just think overcoming these things is where the resilience has come from. You know, I can't say, because I do think there is, and I did a blog about this a long, long time ago. It would have been on an old website, but I talked about nature and nurture, because I think that a part of it is kind of, you know, it's nature. It's, you know, it's kind of part of your personality and who you are. I think that a lot of the things that I've achieved are also down to having ADHD. But I think that it's just having the strength and ability to just be able to keep picking yourself up from such a young age. And I was asked as well whether, I was on another podcast recently, and I was asked, you know, whether you needed to have overcome certain things to develop that resilience and to do the things, you know, that great people do. And I honestly do. I honestly think that unless there is no good without bad. There is no light without dark, right? And we need to really kind of get that across as well, you know, because I'm a cup half full person. I'm not very confident. I struggle with my confidence. I'm not going to lie. People wouldn't ever think that, but I do. But I guess I'm a very positive person. I am a positive person, but I also have my challenges. I have my days where I really have to pick myself up. I have a circle of people around me that I now can rely on to kind of help me get out of those situations. Ultimately, it comes down to me and the way that I think about things, and taking myself, like I said right at the beginning, trying to take myself out of the situation and just remember what I'm here for and what my purpose is. And also to remember that we need to have a little bit of joy and a bit of fun along the way as well. I don't know if that answers your question, but you know, I think the resilience comes from, you know, going through shit, and you've got two choices in life. You become a victim or you become
So we had, there is this event I started since I've opened Il Salotto, and I called it Building Babes, and it's an evening for women only. And every month we got a speaker, and then it's very small numbers, a very intimate evening, kind of a safe space. So we all sit around in a circle, and we got a glass of wine, a bit of cheese and salami that never hurts. 2 nights ago, we had a psychologist from Aberdeen University, and she's specialized. She's done a lot of research on the menopause and the perimenopause and what hormonal imbalances do to you. Obviously, I make no mystery of it. I'm just coming out of 4 very difficult years that were triggered by perimenopause, a very bad perimenopause. And one of the main things that I discovered with Linda the other night is that when you come out of it, 70% of the women that go through these difficult times, but then they come out of it, they actually feel incredibly empowered by what they went through.
Yeah.
And that's true for me. The reason why all of a sudden I'm confident enough to open this 300 square meters space in the heart of city center of Glasgow that I never in a million years thought I could actually do on my own. As you say, you can either just go down the rabbit hole and, commit suicide or stay depressed for the rest of your life or whichever. But then if you find the energy and the strength to come out of it, you're actually coming out of it so much stronger.
Exactly. And we need to, and this is why as well, we need to, as women that have been through that, we need to share those stories as well, because we need to, I don't want people to look at what I'm doing or to look at what you're doing and thinking, oh, that was just easy. That was easy because she's got a privileged background. I've had it. I've had men say to me, oh, yeah, you've only got where you are because you've got a rich husband. I was brought up on a council estate. I was brought up with secondhand clothes. I was I was kicked out. I had to stand on my own 2 feet. Everything has come through some kind of a challenge or a struggle. But I do want to say, you've exemplified my point perfectly. You didn't become a victim, you became a creator, right? Of your life, right? And I think that, and a creator, obviously you have created something amazing, right? And that's going to have an impact, and that's having a legacy. And I think, the other thing that we need to also remember as women that have been through this is that, because this is what I said as well at the panel talk with Solus. I talked about how we often feel as women that there's only space for so many of us, especially in leadership positions or in successful positions. So we need to make sure, and this is what I'm saying about the power of women comes from supporting each other, taking away, stripping away any jealousy, any what's the word, insecurities that we may have, and just support each other to rise. And when that happens, and I do see it, I've got some amazing, like I said to you, some amazing women around me, but I've also experienced the complete opposite, right? Where people that have had to struggle and fight to get in situations then don't want to help and support other people because they're like, well, I've had to work really hard. Why should she have it easy? Why should she? Or if she rises and she gets to my position, then where am I going to sit? Okay.
Listen, I have to do a bit of so obviously you are Italian, so you would understand that. I have to do a bit of a mea culpa, raise my hand and say I'm guilty of that, because when I start looking at researching for this interview, you obviously are a very attractive woman and you don't have a problem in probably also because you survived anorexia, which it makes more sense to me now, but when you come out on your you quite a lot put yourself out there as a beautiful woman. Again, maybe because where I come from, that we're always shy, we're always in the background, we never shout anything about us. So I said my first initial instant gut reaction was dislike. And then I said, wait a minute, she's not doing anything wrong. She's beautiful. Why would she not put pictures out there? So this is such an interesting point when we are the worst enemy of each other.
Yeah. Do you know what? I'm really pleased that you've touched on that, because I don't talk about this enough. And I was talking about this recently to somebody, because I get that I've had some backlash from people that are like, well, you can't wear that. You can't do that. Why are you posting selfies? And I'm like, nobody tells me how to do things. I haven't come here to do things the way that everybody else has done them. I've come to do things the way that I want to do them. I spent years hiding myself away. I spent years wearing clothes that looked crap. I spent years I've always, when I look back to who I was when I was younger, I was always very girly. I was always very feminine. I always loved nice clothes, and I lost myself. And I never stopped liking nice clothes and looking nice, but I became very frumpy, because I hated who I was. And I am not prepared to ever, I work hard, and I work hard for what I believe in, because I'm also a feminine woman that likes to look nice. And, you know, why is that so threatening to other people? But I get why it is. I get why it is. And I'm not going to lie that even as a woman myself, if there's a woman that walks in a room that's, you know, really attractive, your default response is, oh my God, I'm threatened. But you have to literally, you know, just override that thought, because it's a conditioning. And it's like, look, you know, if this is a good person doing good things and she's attractive, brilliant, I'm all for it. You know, do you know what I mean? And I don't know. I think it's a really important point. And one thing I want to say is that, you know, a lot of times as well, I will get people that go, oh, well, you've only got, you know, you only do what you do, or you've only got where you are because you're attractive and you're using that to your advantage. And I'm like, that's really hurtful, because actually it can be a real downside too. You know, the amount of times I will get people approach me for work when really they're only after one thing. Do you know what I mean? And the inappropriateness that I do come across all of the time. But I am not willing to stop having my nails done if I want to stop wearing the clothes that I want to wear, because I've been there and I will not do it again. And I know that if I'm going to show up as my full self in this world, with my full energy, with everything I've got to offer, then I've got to embrace who I am, you know?
So you on International Women's Day, and I printed it because I thought it was really interesting. You wrote, well, there's a beautiful photo of you as well, but then you wrote, I wish brilliant women had the same confidence as mediocre men. Marilyn got it back then, and yet here we still are. Don't get me wrong, I know many brilliant men whom I adore, I give birth to too. But it's time for great women to take up space. Own your voice, stop waiting for permission. We have more power than we think. Then, shortly after that, I've come across this interview by Sarah Davies, like Dragon's Den Sarah Davies. I'm going to play it over to you, and because I really, it resonated very strongly with me. And I think is, you know, we speak the same language. So I wanted to hear what you think about that. Let's go.
Or I'd be the only young person in the room, or I'd be the only person who sounds like this, which in a lot of rooms people therefore assume because I sound like this, I'm clearly not as bright or as smart as what the rest of the people in the room are. And I was always underestimated. I use that as my superpower. I use that to my advantage. I love nothing more than people underestimating me and then me being able to blow them expectations out of the water. And I always say, you know, people say, how do you deal with that bias? I said, it's other people's problem. It's not your problem. It only becomes your problem if you let it be. If you let that bias affect how you are performing or what you are doing, don't let that cloud your own judgment.
What do you think are the biggest barriers for women entrepreneurs?
I think we hold ourselves back.
Why?
We overthink things. I meet a load of men and they'll say to me, oh, I've had an idea and I'm going to go for it. You'll meet a woman and she'll say, I've had an idea. Hey, I don't know if I'm good enough. I'm going to have to research it. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that. They are so far in pursuit of perfection, they won't get there. And I always say, you're 80% there, get going. Get going. The rest will follow as it is. And I think we're our own biggest critics.
Yeah, 100%. So you agree with me.
You know, and I think, I mean, so many things there that she said that massively resonate. But I think it's interesting because what I said to you before about like when I was in, you know, when I applied for that job, I was in my late 20s, early, whatever, you know, I kind of had it back then. You know, I kind of had this, I'm going to go for it attitude, regardless, I'm not going to overthink it. You know, and like I said, I was in the minority, but then that literally got knocked out of me through life's experiences, you know, for a lot of kind of trauma that I experienced through work. But it's only now that I'm starting to kind of get all of that back, because it's so true. And I want to kind of credit someone today. She messaged me this morning. I bumped into her recently, another woman, amazing woman in the industry, in the fire safety industry, Andrea White. And she's been putting me in touch with some people. And I was like, you know, and I thanked her and I was like, let me know if there's anything I can do for you. And she goes, Rebecca, the only thing I want you to do for you is to believe in yourself and have more confidence. So, you know, the other thing is I think we're always on that journey, right? As women, I think, because we are conditioned, we're conditioned, and, you know, and I think, again, we're living in a world that doesn't always make us feel that we belong. But this is why I will continue to do what I continue to do. I was on the train yesterday, right? And I'm sat next to these two beautiful girls, right? They can't have been, you know, early 20s. They must have been early 20s. and they're talking about weight and counting calories and how they look this way and how they're worried about that. And I was sat there and I was listening to them, and I just went, girls, I said, look, I said, you don't have to pay any attention to me. I said, but honestly, I said, and I said to them, I said, look, I'm speaking as someone who struggled with anorexia at your age. I said, but you're beautiful. Don't focus on all of this, all of this nonsense. And we had a real nice conversation at the end of it. Oh, thank you so much. I'm so pleased that we met each other. And I guess it's just, even the younger generation, they're still feeling that they're not good enough and that they're not, that they've got to kind of, as women, there's pressure on men as well. Don't get me wrong. There is pressure on men as well, more and more, to look a certain way, to act a certain way, to be masculine, but also to be sensitive. Oh, there is. I'm not going to deny, and not also shine a light on that as well. But obviously, as a woman, I can only talk from a woman's perspective, and I can only
exactly. It's like we wouldn't be. Yeah, that's our experience. Talking about our experience, I'm more than, I love men. Don't get me wrong. Every human being is just amazing. So I'm happy to have all these conversations from the perspective of a Black person or Asian, or there are so many different. When we talk about equality, neurodiversity, there is so many different aspects and that are actually affected by some sort of inequality.
Yeah, well, and a lot of it comes down to, kind of background in terms of economic background as well, I think the biggest inequality out there, is still poverty, and the access to opportunities that you do have as you are when you're in a certain social class as well. So yeah, I mean, it's a massive, and the reason I kind of go down that route obviously is because of the lot of work that I did with communities that were deprived, that were on the outskirts, and you could see the barriers that they faced just because of their background and their upbringing as well, before you even put any demographic into the equation, I think, the reason that I shared that post as well is because I think I'd been to an event and I'd seen some men present, and they did an okay job. I'm not going to say they didn't, but it was afterwards, and they were like, really, like, you were brilliant. They were really bigging each other up. And I was sat there and I was thinking, well, it was okay.
Well, actually, just okay.
Just okay. And I was kind of thinking, now, if a woman had done that, and this is why I'm trying really hard as well. When you're asking about the Dame Kelly Holmes, I was like, I'm going to say it was great. I'm going to say it was great. Because normally I'm like, well, I could have done better. And I wish I'd said this and I wish I'd said that. But I'm working on that. Okay. I'm working on that. And I just remember thinking, like, if that was women, another woman would say you were brilliant, but the women would go, oh no, I could have done this and I should have done that, and was it really that good enough? But men just seem to be like, and all fair play to them, they can do that, and this is what I mean by women need to be doing that more.
Yeah, for me, it was also, as a business owner, it was the second part of her interview when she said, stop doubting yourself. You are 80% there, just go. And I think that's what happened with this space here. I'm not there. I don't have the money to pay for the rent yet, but I'll be there, and what she says is any man in my situation would just go for it, and it doesn't matter of the repercussions if it goes wrong, blah, blah. While me, I had weeks where I was complete in blind panic. So what the heck am I doing at such a big space with a big rent to pay? But at the end of the day, you say, why would you not try? I'm very good at what I do. Why would I not try to do it?
Exactly. But that was like when I quit my job with no real business plan. I had a couple of clients in the pipeline that I knew would get me through the next few months, but I was a single mom with a mortgage. I did everything I needed to do. I got fixed my mortgage, did all that kind of stuff that I needed to, and then just went, I'm just going to go for it. Everything else has worked out. Maybe it's not worked out the way that I thought, but that's the beauty of just believing and letting go. The thing is that as women, what we need to do, and that, is I say what we need to do. I hate to say, but I think what I would like to see more of is women stepping into the flow a little bit more, and kind of just believing that things will just happen. And, because I think that that's our power as well as women. As women, men are a little bit more, they are more logical, they are less emotional, whereas we can believe and just not have it all mapped out and figured out like a man would. Do you know what I mean? And that's the beauty of our feminine energy, and we need to be able to step into that a little bit more. But I've struggled with that. Because I had to stand on my own 2 feet, and I've been through, like I said, and I've been through so many things that I've had to be very much in my masculine energy, which is now why I am not going to not embrace the feminine side of myself, because that's my superpower. Everyone says your ADHD is your superpower, or your trauma is your superpower, and I'm like, no, my feminine energy is my superpower.
Right, let's talk about men for a bit, right? So I don't know if you have had same experiences as me. Since I've opened this space, and I'm chuffed a bit that this is already working the way I was hoping it would work. I've been having so many interesting conversations with men. And have you noticed that the new generations they seem to be so much more comfortable with the concept of equality? And I'm getting so much less mansplaining or lecturing from younger men, or even my age, our age men, than what I get from older men.
Actually, right, I'm not so sure that it's
Generation.
Yeah, I mean, there is, don't get me wrong, right? There is a generational divide. I'm not going to say that there aren't. And, and you do see it kind of with the older generation still. They'll say things without even realizing, just because, that's how it has always been. Do you know what I mean? But actually, I think if you can have open, honest conversations, it's not a generational thing. It's an individual thing, right? And the reason I say this is, and I know what you're saying, because I definitely think the younger generation are a lot more open, to equality. They're a lot more open to diversity.
It's more normal. It seemed to be more normal for them.
It does. However, let's not forget that we've also got, the likes of Andrew Tate, and, misogyny actually in young boys is worrying. So I think it swings in roundabouts, because also as well, I have to say that there are so many amazing older men of my age, men older than me, that are incredible and totally get what I'm talking about. And I mean, I did a post about this today. I was at a work event earlier in the week, and it was just me, just me as a woman. Everyone else was a man, but all of them men were really, really, there was a bit of banter, but there was respect. There were younger men. I think there were some men there that were in their 20s and 30s, but then there were some men there that were in their 50s and 60s, actually. And when I think about it, actually, the guys in their 50s and their 60s were, were just, there was no mansplaining. They were great. They were brilliant. And I think, but I've seen the opposite of that as well. I absolutely have, particularly in the construction industry, where you've got a lot of men that will say they're for equality, but my God, the amount of the amount of misogynistic comments, things that they do, etc., completely, degrade what it is that they're saying. They kind of, their actions, speak a lot louder than their. So it's an interesting one. It is an interesting one. Because I think again, it comes down to experience as well. Like I say, I think younger generation are definitely a little bit more open to things. But again, it comes down to then who they experience and what they come across, and I think that we cannot take for granted that the younger generation are just going to come through and are going to be, more on board with equality. We still have to have the conversations, and we still have to, I'm doing it with my kids all of the time. But yeah, I do, I'm not going to say that, because I do agree that, the younger, and again, they are, I think the younger generation, what I really like about the younger generation too, is that they are less likely to stand for shit, right? They're less likely.
That's true. That's so true. They know they protect themselves. They know they are aware of protecting themselves so much better than we were.
Yeah, they won't stand for workplaces that aren't inclusive as much as we will. We will just, I was conditioned to just like it. to just get on with it. I had to do.
You're lucky you got a job, so get on with it.
Exactly that. Exactly. Oh, you're lucky you've got a job. We're up for restructure again, and you're not. I got told that so many times working for the local authority. We're just lucky to still be here, right? And I did feel like that. I thought, oh my God. And even now, sometimes, I'm like, oh my God, I'm lucky to get that client. When I'm like, really, actually, I should be working with people that make me feel good and that value me and that are on my page. But the younger generation, and I see this a lot in the businesses that I work with. Oh, younger people don't want to work. They're lazy. They don't want to, and I'm like, I wish we would stop with that narrative, because actually, just like older, there's a lot of the older generation that don't want to work. You're going to get an element of that in the younger generation. But actually what I think it is that they're not going to stand for the same conditions. I think there was something I was reading recently that said as well, the younger generation are less likely to want to go into middle management positions because they know that, they know basically that the crap that comes along with that. They want more flexibility. They want to be connected to a purpose when they come to work. They're not going to just do what you tell them you need to do in order to just get a salary at the end of the month. And I think that, workplaces really need to rethink the culture and the way that they're doing things if they want to attract and retain, the amazing talent that's out there.
100%. So this is officially the longest conversation I had on this Salotto session. And I have a feeling you and I could carry on for probably forever, but I think for today that was enough. We're looking forward to do a second one in person soon, and honestly, we can carry on.
I am up for that. I've had a few people have contacted me from Glasgow. Do you ever travel up there? I was like, I don't, but I'm open to it. I'm open. I mean, I'm doing stuff in Brighton, in Portsmouth. So let's have a chat.
Come up. Yes, I've got a beautiful space you can work from, and I would love to meet you in person.
Yes, likewise. I've really enjoyed this conversation. Thank you.
Thank you very much for listening to Il Salotto Sessions. If you enjoyed the chat, please make sure you share with your friends and follow our podcast on Spotify or Apple Podcasts. For more information on our events, please visit ilsalotto.design and designpopup.com. You can also find us on Instagram _designpopup and Il Salotto Glasgow, as well as LinkedIn. Should you have any feedback, questions or suggestions, please do get in touch at hello@ilsalotto.design. We would love to hear from you. Thank you.